Welcome to the second season of WriteOn Raquel. I'm your host, Raquel Solano. With us this week is economics major Jim McAndrew. First up on tonight's show is the president's deficit. Okay, Jim. So today the president unveiled his budget for 2011, his plan for what we're going to spend, and it appears that we're going to need to borrow $1.2 trillion to make it to the $3.6 trillion that he's proposed. We're borrowing $1.2 trillion when we're already in debt, so many hundreds of millions. So what do you think we're going to do?
That's quite true. The political atmosphere, I haven't so much gauged. There is, in my opinion, a sort of Republican upheaval, so to speak.
Mm-hmm. And rightly so, I might add.
I understand that that Obama has called for a freeze of certain types of spending. That seems to me a drop in the bucket. When you take a look at the larger debt that's been growing for quite some time, to make it easier to viewers, that amounts to something like $40,000 per person.
I remember hearing not too long ago that each one of our children, which we don't even have yet, is responsible for like $100,000 worth of the debt. So we might be responsible for 40, but our kids are responsible for 100,000. And I'd like to add that his plan assumes no inflation, and by doing so, that's essentially devaluing the American dollar as it is. So I guess to start, I should have asked you if you can explain a little bit about why is most of the news media calling it the president's deficit? Like, what does that mean?
Well, a deficit is servicely defined in formal terms, basically as a period of time, a fiscal period, where the revenue, the taxes that the government takes in, is less than what they spend.
Okay.
And so if you have deficit after deficit after deficit, you end up with large federal debt.
Which we certainly have.
And that's the boat we're in right now.
Okay. One of the other interesting things about this is that I believe it's 6% more than the year before, right? Which is something like 3 times more than the prior 2 years what was planned to have spent.
I see.
So why do you think, what could be responsible for some of this money, the added money that, what do you think we're applying it to? Why do we need more money the next year than this year?
That's a good question.
I know the answer.
In part, it has to do with a view that what the economy needs is stimulus. It needs government spending in a time of quote-unquote depression economics.
Right. So this is essentially a third stimulus package in a way. The president is trying to pass this, what as he's calling the jobs bill, but it's not a jobs bill. It's a way to revive the economy. What were they doing with the first 2 stimulus packages? Billions of dollars. Why couldn't this jobs bill have been attached into one of them? Because they weren't focusing on the right things? Because for the past year, the president's tried to pass health care and ignored everything else?
Right. I mean, I think those are good grievances, positions to take. Though my own opinion being that we ought to not lump so much legislation, so much spending into one or several or a few bills. Because the trouble with even those large bailouts that we've done already is that it's very hard to spend quickly and intelligently. To spend those sort of sums of money quickly and in places where they ought to be is pretty troublesome because we don't know where the future will bring us.
Well, we also don't know where the money has gone because Obama, one of the main things he talked about was how transparent his administration was going to be. And recently he released a statement, I believe on one of the cable news channels, that he's sorry that his administration wasn't able to do that because it became more of an issue of getting it done rather than explaining to everyone about why, or getting people on board with where the money was going. But I mean, this money is coming from an increase in taxes. Every one of us, I believe 2 days ago I heard that it's $80,000 is now the cutoff. If you make a family of 4 or something has $80,000, you are now in the upper class and you're going to be taxed as such.
Yikes.
So you have 2 kids in college and you have between you and your husband or wife, and you make $80,000 a year. That's not so much money in the end.
Right.
You know?
I don't think those sort of initiatives, the initiatives that Obama would be proposing, if that happens to be the case, with regard to the $80,000 position there, I think those are not growth friendly, so to speak. There's a wonderful article in a Cato journal, Cato being a libertarian think tank in Washington. On one side of the graph, they had size of the government burden in an economy, and on the other side of the graph, they had GDP growth. And without putting everyone to sleep and without talking too much about graphs, suffice to say, where you found large government burdens, you found lesser GDP growth rates. And so the sort of moral there is just that if you want long-term economic growth, which we all do,
Absolutely.
The way to do that is try to trim government here and there.
Well, I would agree with that completely. I think the less government involved, the better in the end, because markets will regulate themselves. Everything will fix itself.
Certainly. Spontaneous odor, in other words.
Okay. We also have this up in the news recently, Khalid Sheikh Mohammed's trial, and I think there's 4 or 5 other terrorists responsible for the 9/11 attacks where they should be held. Are they entitled to a civilian trial? If so, should it be in New York City, just a couple blocks away from where, from the ground zero, sorry. If not, where do we put them? Do we build a new facility somewhere out in the middle of nowhere? Or do we just try them at Guantanamo Bay like they should be?
Right. Yeah, there are many legal questions there. I understand that Eric Holder, the Attorney General, so the government's top lawyer, in other words, has said that he can be either tried in a military tribunal or he can be tried in a civilian court. And so on this, with this fellow, they've decided to take him in civilian court.
Oh, no, they haven't yet. And here's the thing.
Really?
It's at the expense, no decision has been made. Someone came on Meet the Press on Sunday morning and left it completely open. It is not leaning one way or the other right now.
Okay.
The thing is, it's at the expense of the American taxpayer. The American taxpayers have paid for Guantanamo Bay, okay? We paid for that to be where, when people do things like this, military, like war crimes, where they will be tried. Most certainly, they've decided that he's going to be executed. We already know that. I mean, that came out today, that everyone's saying that. But
Sure. Even Obama, I understand.
the taxpayers have paid for Guantanamo. Now they're going to pay for him to be transported and held in New York for 2 years. The trial is expected to take 2 years. $200 million a year. Do you know what kind of chaos that's going to be?
What I'm more concerned about, though the money is at issue, and I think all civilians should be wary of government spending, I think we should be concerned about what sort of security, what issues of national security could perhaps be
Well, one of the things I've recently heard is that one of the next terrorist attacks is going to be on our economic system, and certainly if the trial is held in New York City, this could be considered as such. More current political news when we come back.